I drove up to my old man's house in a black Escalade rental, windshield fogged, hands sweaty, like I was heading into a damn job interview, 5 years gone, and I still felt like the loser kid pulling into the driveway, hoping not to screw anything up. Name's Neil Caldwell, 31 years old, born and raised in Wellesley, Massachusetts, now living in Austin, Texas. I left Boston behind after my family made it real clear I was the extra wheel. Nothing I ever did was enough. Not next to Owen, the golden boy Harvard lawyer, or Mitch, the big shot designer living in Manhattan like he invented concrete. I was the youngest, the one who liked fixing things with my hands, messed around in auto shop back in high school. One year, I built a prototype that got first place in a national fuel efficiency competition. Thought maybe that would mean something. It didn't. Dad barely looked up from his paper. Mitch had just landed an unpaid summer gig at some architecture firm in Chicago. That's all anyone talked about that dinner, so I bounced, took what little I had and moved to Austin. I worked construction, delivered packages, learned code at night in a ratty studio apartment. No one called, not for birthdays, not even when I got in a bike accident and busted my collarbone. It was like I didn't exist unless I showed up with my tail between my legs. But I didn't crawl. I built something. Fast forward 5 years. I own a logistics tech company with 50 employees and contracts that'd make your jaw drop. Real money, real freedom, and until last month, I hadn't spoken to any of them in over a year. Then, out of nowhere, my mom called. Said, "We miss you, Neil. Come home for Christmas." That was it. No apology. Just a soft invitation like nothing had happened, but I bought in. Told myself maybe they'd changed. Maybe they'd finally see me. I wasn't going to show up empty-handed either. Spent $80,000 on gifts, Rolex for Dad, diamond bracelet for Mom, a full Italy trip for Owen and his wife and kids, and for Mitch, a business investment, seed capital to open his own firm. I didn't care about the money. I wanted one thing, to walk through that front door and not be invisible. Quick note, before we start, how's your day going, and where are you joining from? The house looked the same, perfect hedges, white lights along the gutters, a glowing wreath so symmetrical it almost pissed me off. I parked, shut off the engine, and sat there for a second. 5 years since I left this place. And still, my heart was pounding like I was 16 and about to catch hell for scratching the Camry. I grabbed the bags and headed for the front steps. Let's see if they finally notice I exist. She opened the door like I was there to sell something. "Neil," she said, flat as day. No hug, no smile. Just stepped aside and motioned toward the foyer like I was an Amazon delivery guy, not her youngest son coming home after 5 damn years. I walked in with the bags, boots squeaking on the tile. The house smelled like it always did at Christmas. Pine, cloves, and something fake, probably from one of those fancy diffusers. It was all perfectly arranged, every candle centered, every light dimmed just right. But the air, cold. Dad came out from his study, still holding his rocks glass. Gave me this limp side pat like I was a client showing up for a business meeting. "Looks pricey," he said, peeking past me at the Escalade in the driveway. Like that was the first thing he wanted to point out. "Rental," I said. "Figured I'd go for comfort." That was all he gave me. I set the gifts down by the tree. No one helped. No one asked about the drive. Just quiet footsteps and the sound of a wine bottle uncorking. Then came Owen, firstborn, legal legend, walking in with his wife Julia and their 2 kids like they were stepping onto a magazine cover. Navy coat, leather gloves, polished grin. He hugged me with that stiff pat-pat motion, the kind you give a coworker who lost their dog. "Glad you made it," he said, like I was crashing a wedding. Mitch showed up next, hair slicked back, shirt too tight, holding a bottle of wine like a prop. "Look at that tech scene tan," he said, handing me a glass before I could say anything. "What's it like, working from a rooftop pool?" "I work from an office," I said. He laughed like I was joking. Dinner was some catered-looking roast beef, mashed potatoes piped onto the plate like wedding food. Mom had printed menus. Printed. Owen sat at the head of the table, telling stories about some Fortune 500 client he'd strategized a resolution for. Every time he spoke, Mom leaned in like she was front row at a Broadway show. "Oh, you should have heard him on the call with the general counsel," she said, so articulate. Mitch jumped in with talk about his latest boutique project, mid-century minimalism meets adaptive reuse, whatever that meant. He even had digital renderings pulled up on his phone, passing them around like baby photos. I waited for a break, finally said, "We just signed a national contract with one of the top parcel companies. Gonna roll out our software in all their routing hubs." No one responded. Mom smiled, tight. "That's nice." Then she turned, face lighting up. "Julia, did you tell Neil about the gala you organized? The one with the city council people?" And just like that, my sentence was erased. Julia talked about floral arrangements and VIP tables. Mitch chimed in about lighting design. I looked around that table, silver chargers, crystal glasses, Owen's kid drumming a spoon on the edge of his plate, and realized no one gave a damn about what I'd done. I could have told them I invented teleportation, and they still would have asked if I RSVP'd to Julia's gala. Dad poured more wine. Didn't even glance my way. I pushed my chair back. "I'll unload the rest of the bags," I said, even though no one asked. I walked out the front door without a jacket. Cold air hit me hard, but I didn't care. Inside, I heard laughter. Real, unfiltered laughter. Just not mine. I was up before the sun. Couldn't sleep. I kept thinking maybe today would be different. So I cooked. French toast with cinnamon and vanilla. Bacon, crispy like Dad liked. Grapefruit juice, his favorite, fresh squeezed. I even folded the damn napkins into little triangles. The whole thing looked like a bed and breakfast spread. They came down in sweats and robes, rubbing sleep from their eyes like it was a motel buffet. Mom walked into the kitchen, looked at the plates, and wrinkled her nose. "I was going to serve croissants," she said, pulling out a tray of frozen ones and slamming the oven door. Ethan, Mitch's kid, the only one who ever looked me in the eye, gave me a little nod and sat down. Owen didn't say a word, just shoveled food into his mouth like he was carb loading for a triathlon. No thanks. "No, this is great." Just forks clinking and the fridge beeping because someone left it open too long. We moved to the living room after. The tree lights blinked in rhythm, and the floor was buried in wrapping paper and glossy gift bags. My gifts were hard to miss. I had them done by a local shop. Real bows, thick wrap, everything coordinated. The kids tore into theirs first. Squeals, laughter, toy parts flying. My name got mentioned a couple times. From Uncle Neil, then quickly replaced with, "Look what I got." That was fine. They're kids. The adults opened theirs next. Owen's wife held up the Italy itinerary like she'd found buried treasure, then immediately frowned. "This is too much," she said, still gripping it like gold. Dad opened the vintage Rolex. His eyebrows jumped. "Well, damn," he muttered. That was probably the most emotion I'd gotten out of him since I walked through the door. Then Mitch got to his. He unfolded the envelope and pulled out the check. He just stared at it. "You serious?" he asked, voice cracking a little. This'll cover my office space." "Yeah," I said. "You talked about it last year. Figured you were still serious." He blinked fast and nodded, didn't say anything else. I waited, watched the last few boxes get passed around. The wrapping slowed, the pile shrank. Then it stopped. And nothing had my name on it. I kept waiting, even as they started talking again, cleaning up scraps and stacking boxes. My eyes scanned the floor, thinking maybe one got lost under the couch or something. Maybe one of the kids mixed up tags. Then Emma, Owen's youngest, tugged on Mom's sleeve and asked clear as day, "Where's Uncle Neil's presents?" The room froze for a second. Mom laughed, light, airy, like she forgot to bring in the groceries. "Oh, we forgot." Just like that. Like it was a joke or a sock someone left at the gym. She didn't even look sorry, just moved on, calling the kids to get dressed for church. I stood there, watching them scatter. Not angry, not sad, just invisible, again. Nobody said a damn thing. The air in the room shifted. You could feel the tension thicken the silence, like the room was waiting to see if I'd snap, throw something, storm out. But I didn't break. I stood up, slow and steady. Reached into my back pocket and pulled out my phone. Since I didn't get anything, I said, I figured I'd share what I got myself this year. Owen looked confused. Julia froze mid-sip. Dad kept swirling his scotch. I tapped through the photos and started passing the phone around. "This," I said, "is my headquarters. 3 stories, full solar. It's about 10 minutes from downtown Austin." The first picture was a shot of the building at night, glass and steel, lit up with my company's name in bold black letters across the front. Redline Logistics Technologies. "It's ours," I added. "No lease." No landlord. Paid off last February. They passed the phone like it was radioactive. Nobody looked me in the eye. I built software that uses real-time route optimization for last-mile delivery. Big companies lose billions every year in waste. We cut that by half. FedEx rolled us out first, then UPS, DHL's next. Mitch leaned forward. That's your tech? I nodded. Started in my garage with a broken laptop and 2 interns. Now we've got 50 employees. Offices in 3 states. Owen gave this weird, forced chuckle like he didn't know how to respond. 3 months ago, I said, we were acquired. Private equity. Final valuation came in at $520 million. That got their attention. Dad lowered his glass so fast I thought he'd drop it. Julia gasped. Owen blinked like I'd just spoken Latin. I walked away with $190 million after everything cleared, I said. After taxes, after bonuses, after the lawyers took their piece. Mitch whispered under his breath, "No way." I took the phone back and swiped to the next picture. This is my house. It was a full-glass modern build on the lake. 5 bedrooms, custom finishes, deck with infinity pool. I flipped to the next shot, my garage. Rivian truck, custom Bronco, and a McLaren. I don't drive much, but they look good parked out front. Still, nobody spoke, just wide eyes and tight lips. I showed the last photo and held the phone up so they could all see. A small sign in front of a modest brick building. The Walsh Initiative, I said. Named it after my high school shop teacher, the only adult who ever gave a crap what I could build. We give grants, tech support, and free consulting to small-town logistics startups, the kind of businesses nobody took seriously when I was growing up. Mom had stopped cleaning. She just stood there, dish towel in her hand, staring at me. You did all this in 5 years? She asked quietly. 6, I said. But yeah, built it from scratch, no loans, no family favors. Dad sat back down, staring at the floor like he'd just missed the last 50 years. I just thought, I said, pacing now, if I gave everyone what they wanted, watch, trip, check, maybe this year someone would see me, actually see me. Ethan, sweet kid, always watching more than talking, stood up, lifted his glass of orange juice and said loud and clear, to Neil, the one we all slept on. He didn't say it sarcastic, he meant it. Everyone else stayed quiet. But for the first time in that damn house, I didn't feel like the extra chair. I sat back down and took a bite of cold French toast. No one moved. No one dared shift the subject. Let 'em sit in it. The second I finished eating, it was like someone lifted the pause button. People scattered fast, little cliques forming like high school all over again. Owen pulled Julia into the den. Mitch went outside to call someone, probably to brag. Dad vanished without a word. Mom, she started fake cleaning, wiping an already clean counter, stacking the same 3 plates over and over, avoiding eye contact like it'd burn. Owen passed through the kitchen, trying to play normal. Hey, you want to join us later? We're going to play Cards Against Humanity. I just gave him a look. He didn't push it. The air was different now. He wasn't the center of the room anymore. That shine he walked in with, it dulled fast. I stepped out to the garage, needed air. That's where Ethan found me. Hands in his hoodie pockets, eyes kind. He didn't say much, just pulled something from his backpack and handed it over. It was a photo. Old, wrinkled at the edges. Me holding the robotics trophy from sophomore year. Him next to me, arms slung over my shoulder, grinning wide. I kept this, he said. All these years. You were always the smart one. Everyone thought it was Owen, but I knew. I stared at it a second longer than I meant to. My throat tightened, but I pushed it down. Thanks, kid, I said. That means more than you know. He shrugged. I just didn't know how to say it before. I gave his shoulder a squeeze. You just did. Later, back in the kitchen, I was slicing pie when I felt her behind me. You've done well, Mom said. Her voice had that edge, like she didn't know whether to be proud or terrified. I didn't turn around, just kept slicing. Did it surprise you that I made it without you? She didn't answer right away. I heard her exhale, slow and uneven. Yes, she said finally. It did. Not because I didn't think you were smart. I just didn't think you'd stay afloat without someone steering you. I looked over my shoulder. That's how little you thought of me? She shook her head. Number. That's how scared I was. You reminded me of me, independent, stubborn. and I know how hard the world can be when you don't follow the rules. I didn't know what to say to that. She stepped closer. It wasn't hate. It was fear. Watching you go off script, I panicked. For once, she didn't try to sugarcoat it. No half-baked excuses. No blaming college advisors or bad timing. We stood there, quiet. No hug, no tears. Just an understanding settling in between us, like the kitchen light had dimmed. "Pie smells good," she said. I handed her a plate. Still warm. She took it, sat down at the table, and actually ate it. That was enough. I was wiping crumbs off the counter when Dad appeared in the doorway, glass in hand, face unreadable. "Come with me," he said. I followed him down the hall, past the same family photos that never changed. Owen's graduation, Mitch at some gallery, me, nowhere. The study door creaked open, same leather chairs. Same shelves of law books he never read anymore. But this time, he didn't sit behind the desk. He sat across from me. That alone told me this wasn't another lecture. He cleared his throat, then looked me dead in the eye. "I owe you," he said. "An apology for everything." I didn't say a word, just sat back and waited. He ran a hand through his hair. "When you veered off the path, I got scared. You weren't supposed to be the one to leave the script. That was never part of the plan." "What plan?" I asked. "The one where I pretend to be Owen until I crack under it?" He didn't argue. He just nodded slowly. "Your mother pushed hard. She wanted structure for you. I let her steer the ship, and I didn't fight for you." He paused. "That's on me." The silence in that room hit different. It wasn't awkward. It was heavy, like something finally snapped loose. "I don't need perfect parents," I said. "I just needed someone to be honest with me, someone to say, 'You're not broken, you're just different.'" He stared down at the glass in his hand, then back at me. "Well," he said, voice low, "here I am." I believed him, not because it was a speech. It wasn't. He looked tired, smaller, real. "I always thought success meant suits, titles, degrees," he said. "You proved me wrong." I leaned forward. "All I ever wanted was for you to stop comparing me to everyone else." He let out a shaky breath. "I did. For too long. You deserved better." I watched him set his drink on the table, fingers tapping the glass like he wasn't sure what came next. "For what it's worth," he added, "I'm proud of you, not for the money, for doing it your way." That part hit harder than I expected. We sat there for another minute. No advice, no excuses, just air finally clearing between us after 30 years of fog. I stood up first. "You hungry?" He cracked a grin. "Always." We walked out together, side by side. No tension, no power games. For the first time in my life, my dad didn't look down at me. He just looked at me. That night, I called everyone into the living room. No games, no drinks. Just one last thing I needed to say before this trip ended. They came in slowly. Owen with a drink in hand, Julia still scrolling her phone, Mom wiping her hands on a dish towel like she couldn't help herself. Dad sat down stiff in his recliner, quiet. I stood in front of the fireplace and pulled out a folder from my bag, thick, formal paper inside. "I've got one more surprise," I said. "Merry Christmas?" I walked it over to Dad and handed it to him. He opened it, brow furrowing. Then his eyes went wide. "That's the deed," I said, "to this house. I bought it outright last week. Set up a trust in the Caldwell name. It'll stay in the family forever. No mortgages, no sales, no arguing over it when you're gone." Mom gasped. Hands flew up to her mouth like I'd just handed them a winning lottery ticket. Dad just blinked at the paperwork. "Neil, this is..." He didn't even finish. "But," I said, holding up a finger, "I've got one condition." Everyone looked up. "This house becomes neutral ground. No more comparisons, no judgments, no picking favorites. If we're going to rebuild this family, it starts here. No one gets to be king. We all come through that door as equals." They didn't respond right away, but something changed in their faces. Dad nodded, once, firm. "Fair," he said. Mom sat down slowly on the edge of the couch, looked over at the bracelet I'd gotten her, still sitting on the coffee table where she'd tossed it earlier. She picked it up, turned it over in her hands, then slid it onto her wrist without a word. That was her answer. Julia leaned into Owen's side, didn't say anything, but even she looked softer. Mitch gave me a thumbs up from the back of the room. Dad, meanwhile, pulled out his phone and started typing. He tapped for a while, then muttered, Did you know this Rolex was worn by a Navy pilot in the 70s? Same model, hell of a piece. I sat down in one of the side chairs. Let the quiet fill the space. No dramatic hugs, no speech. Just stillness that finally didn't feel forced. We sat like that for a while. Someone turned on the fireplace channel. Owen's kid fell asleep on the floor. For once, nobody was trying to win anything. I left before sunrise. The house was still. Quiet except for the soft creak of floorboards and the low hum of the heater kicking on. I slipped on my jacket and grabbed my bag from the foyer. Dad was already waiting at the door, car keys in hand. He didn't say much as we stepped outside into the cold. The driveway was slick with frost, streetlights still glowing like it was the middle of the night. We loaded the trunk in silence. Just as I was about to shut it, he stopped me with a hand on my shoulder, firm, solid. "You made us rethink everything," he said. "About success, about family. You've done more than we ever imagined." I looked him straight in the eye. Took a while to figure out I didn't need your approval, but I'm glad I finally got your respect. He nodded. "You got it." That was all I needed. I got in, started the engine, and rolled down the window. He stepped back, hands in his coat pockets, eyes on mine. No more lectures, no more trying to mold me into something I never was. Just respect, real and quiet. The road out of Wellesley was empty. Bare trees lined the route like old ghosts, but I didn't feel haunted anymore. I wasn't driving away bitter, just done. That chapter closed. I used to believe if I worked hard enough, made enough noise, earned enough stripes, they'd finally see me. That one day I'd get a seat at their table with my name carved into it. Turns out, you don't need their table when you've already built your own. Recognition isn't something you beg for. It's something you force people to reckon with. You show up, undeniable, until the silence breaks. That Christmas didn't fix everything. I'm not naive. We're still who we are, Caldwells. Polished, proud, sometimes cold. But I left with something better than approval. I left with my voice, my rules. I don't know if we'll ever turn into one of those movie families with matching pajamas and game night traditions. Maybe we're not built for that. Maybe we never were. Doesn't matter. Because I'm building my own crew now, my own world. People who don't care what college I went to, or what title I hold, or how many LinkedIn posts I write. People who care about the person I am when no one's watching. And if my family ever forgets again, if they fall back into old habits and rewrite the story without me in it, that's fine. I remember who I am, and that's enough.